As COVID-19 was spreading throughout the prison system this spring, the Prison Journalism Project was launched to highlight incarcerated people using their voice through firsthand stories. We now welcome in the founders of the Prison Journalism Project, Yukari, Iwatani, Kane, and Shaheen, Pasha. Thanks for joining us today. The publication started this April. Why do you think this was the right time to start releasing inmate stories in the middle of the pandemic?
Well, we knew it was a big historical moment just generally, but we really felt like their voices needed to be part of the historical record, especially given that there was so little information coming out of the prisons, and what little we knew was showing that a lot of the prisons weren't handling the situation well.
You know, there's a certain perspective a lot of people have on prisons and people in those prisons. Can you talk a little bit about why giving a firsthand perspective is so important?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that what you find is when people go behind bars, oftentimes all they're remembered for, all they're thought of is in the lens of their crime. And we forget that there's humanity there, there's people, there's families, there's a lot of stories that are happening behind bars. And what we wanted to do was to give life back and kind of show what this community is doing. Because once you go behind bars, your life isn't over. You just have different stories and different things that are happening. So what we felt is, especially right now where everyone is isolated, everyone kind of feels what it's like to be just not connected with other people, we wanted to make sure that the men and women behind bars were connected, that their stories were also being told.
Now, many people that are incarcerated are people of color who are generally underrepresented in many newsrooms. So was that something that played into your plan here? Was that something you were even aware of going into this?
Absolutely. The stories, there's so many stories that weren't being told. And right after the pandemic started, we also had George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement picking up again. And so we had writers really showing us as well that what they've been wanting to tell and haven't been able to tell. And so, absolutely, I think one of our principal goals is to achieve that equity and coverage in terms of incarcerated stories about the incarcerated. There are a lot of good stories that are being told by places like the Marshall Project, but the voices are largely, or the reporting is largely from the outside in. And we felt that there was value for reporting from the inside because they know their own communities better than anybody else, and it's such a closed community.
The recidivism rate among graduates of the San Quentin news program is 0% right now. Why do you think that is?
It just shows the power of programs and being able to stay connected, feeling like they're part of society. I mean, the men at San Quentin News are very much journalists. I mean, I think of them. We both think of them as our colleagues, and they're always observing, and the fact that they can write, and they're writing articles for the outside world, that they have contacts, makes a huge difference. And just to give some perspective, we are talking about a small number. The San Quentin news staff is about, I think, 20 editorial staff at the most full-time, and then they have some part-time contributors as well. But so when we talk about 0% recidivism, which is an amazing number, we're still talking about probably 12 to 15 guys outside.
And how are people chosen for the program?
So when I was at San Quentin News, I was teaching the Journalism Guild, which is an introductory journalism program for men who wanted to write for the paper. And so we created a formal curriculum that was about a semester long. And then that was really a talent spotting class. And of course, it's inside prison. So it's not just about the talent for writing and reporting, but teamwork becomes really, really important, and the ability to get along.
All right, now San Quentin News right now is the only regularly published newspaper in the California prison system, and there's only 10 prison publications in the U.S. as a whole, down from 250 back in the 50s. So why is it an issue that these publications have been generally eliminated?
Well, I think what you look at decades ago, there was this less of this punitive stance that we have right now when it comes to mass incarceration. It was about real rehabilitation. And then over the 70s, 80s, 90s, we started seeing a shift in the narrative. And when we talk about men and women that are behind bars, it became more about the super predator. It became about the 1994 crime bill, where it really did become about punishment. At the same time, we also had a few Supreme Court cases which showed that the men and women behind bars have a First Amendment right to express themselves. And that can be sometimes be scary as well when you're talking about Department of Corrections. And so you can't stop somebody from having a First Amendment right to express themselves, but you can take away a newspaper to give them that ability to do that. So what we saw was a lot of prisons just started taking away the newspapers, in part because they were nervous about this, what people would say. So I think that it was a double whammy. You had, yes, people inside have First Amendment rights; they can express themselves, and no, we want to be more punitive, so we need to make sure we restrict that, and then that's what you get now.
So in the programs that are running, you're training a lot of these people in the journalistic principles that they need to share their experiences. So kind of starting from scratch for some of these people, have you been surprised at all by the quality of their work?
It's amazing. I mean, Shaheen and I can talk all day about our favorite stories, but it's the environment lends itself to observation. I mean, so many of our writers are just super observant. And then when you combine an ability to write or a love for writing, you just get these incredible stories with perspectives. And it really goes to show you that there are stories that there's just no way you can get from the outside, no matter how good of a reporter you are, because you aren't there living and breathing, and you don't understand it, and you don't know the right interview subjects, even if you were going to work on a story. And so it's the talent is amazing. I mean, it's amazing. There are 2.3 million people who are incarcerated in the United States, and so there's got to be.
Now, some of the stories that we've read are, serious, shedding light on how inmates are, say, feeling during the pandemic. Others have shared their experiences after George Floyd was killed in May, but not all the stories are serious, and you ladies were chuckling a little bit. What are some of the more comical pieces that stand out to you?
Oh, one of our favorites, and we shouldn't say we have favorites, but we totally love the story. Is about onions as contraband behind bars, and basically just what the guys are doing and how they're hiding the onions, right, in order to bring them back, in order to be able to.
I'm scared to ask.
It's fantastic. It really is. It's one of those stories that when I read it, I was just like, okay, I'm never going to look at an onion the same way, but it's amazing. And it also shows ingenuity. I mean, it's just, there's so much in it. And I think we have so many like stories full of life there too, because there is humor behind bars. You're living, you have friends, you have communities, you have hierarchies and ways of doing things. And and a lot of it, of course, is very, scary or dreary, but whenever you live anywhere, you're going to find moments of joy, and you're going to find moments of friendship and love. And I think for us, that's one of our big drivers. We want to be able to cover incarceration, people behind bars, as a community. And that part of communities, sometimes you have the hard hitting stories, and sometimes you have stories by onions, and you have to put them all out there.
Very interesting. Thank you both for your perspective on this and for your work. It's a very interesting project.